there, and thank you for joining me for today's live reading of Unearthly Magik, Black Cauldron Detective Agency, Book 1 by Matilda Reyes, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1. Someone was getting hurt tonight. I didn't want to do it, but from everything I read in my target's file, this man wasn't the type to go down quietly. Though my agency usually didn't take jobs that required getting our hands dirty, the money was too good, and business was slow. He was a bad man, allegedly, so making a few bucks from this transaction didn't bother me much. Transaction? That was what my partners and I decided to call this manhunting mission for an even scarier guy, a mobster, just to ease our collective conscience. I shook my head and focused. One reliable thing about Manhattan was how much time riders spent standing on platforms waiting for trains. The other thing was that there were always people waiting with you no matter what the hour. Tonight was no different, and that worried me. If my target fought dirty, there was a risk of casualties, too many people around who might get hurt. I smoothed my long, wavy black hair into a secure ponytail, then pretended to take a few selfies with the poster of some god-awful movie that my best friend made me see behind me. The zoom on cameras was amazing these days. With a quick swipe of my fingers, I saw the man on the platform across from me as clearly as if I were standing right next to him. He didn't look anything special, not someone who did the heinous things I was chasing him to talk about. He was maybe a hair's breadth shorter than average height, with thick, light brown hair parted to the left and neatly trimmed above his ears. His face had no discerning features that would have linked him to one ethnicity or another. His skin was warm olive, the kind that darkened 10 shades in the sun, and his round, brown eyes told me nothing as they met mine. Shit. After 36 hours of following this man around, he finally made me. Exhausted as I was, there was no excuse for this. I was a damn good detective, and I should have been on top of my game. I'd beat myself up later for not cornering him earlier and saving myself the trouble of a fight. The subway station was danker than usual, a mix of trash leaking across the platforms and into the tracks, marijuana, and the stink of someone eating something unfortunate like fish. I glanced at the puddles of grossness I'd have to avoid, both trash and the creepy men who watched my every move. They didn't scare me, but I felt terrible for the women who dealt with this shit every day. Most ordinaries were terrible beings with no regard for one another or the earth. I like to think I was a good person, violent tendencies aside. And sometimes I wish I could take some time off from my day job and go all vigilante around the city. I was a gray mage and a damn talented one at that. No one would know the difference. Ordinaries would vaguely remember seeing a blur. Other mages would talk behind my back, but I was used to that. No one got into my line of work to make friends, and I was no exception. The fact that he wasn't turning any heads helped him blend in with the crowd of increasingly disgusting smelling ordinaries. Cripes, didn't these people bathe? And why the hell were they crowding me? Why couldn't they be like the few ordinaries I liked? I wasn't sure what exactly this man had done to get on Antonio Vespucci's shit list, and I didn't care all that much, to be honest. Vespucci alluded to the target being a bad man, the kind that desperately needed to be taken off the streets. Coming from the mage world's most notorious mobster, that was saying a lot. I pretended to take another picture, pursing my lips like an idiot, and snapped as many frames of my target as I could. It wasn't enough to fool him. He may not have known who I was, but he had to have known people were looking for him. He shook out his arms and legs as if preparing for a fight. Damn it. He was going to run, and I hated running. The man watched me for another long moment, likely trying to figure out if I were an actual threat, and found me lacking. Ooh, that boiled my blood, so I did what any pissed-off mage would do. I flipped up the gray hood of my jacket and waited for him to respond. He gasped, and I knew that he'd just figured out exactly who I was. Good. In the magical world, the gray hood was symbolic of my allegiance to no one and nothing outside of my own coven, not even mages of the same elemental kinship. Gray mages worked for their own interests and nothing more. We determined whether or not to get involved on an issue on what we got out of the situation. We tended to be the most skilled and dangerous because we played with all types of magic. The left and right hands, good and bad, black and white, blah, 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 all that crap that good little mages feared. I tended to engage in New York City's underground supernatural world, and that meant I knew all the dirty tricks. I also wasn't above a good fistfight, so there was that. Sucks to be him. Vain as it might have been, but I loved my hood. To Ordinary's eyes, it might have been just another charcoal sweater, one far too heavy for the summer heat, but to anyone with magic flowing through their veins, the gray was iridescent, and it shimmered in the harsh lights of the subway station. That flash of light lit up the room in his eyes and gave him a hint of my magical abilities, and that was enough to scare the bejesus out of my target. He gasped loud enough for me to hear over the din of rattling tracks and lumbering trains. In the distance, a train horn blared as it rumbled down his side of the platform, the one headed downtown toward the tip of Manhattan. He'd have limited options to hide, and we both knew it. He glanced between the platform and the approaching train and the stairs that led toward the exit, smack in the middle of Manhattan's funky and eclectic village, considering his options. Shifting on his toes, I saw that he made up his mind. He thought he could lose me, but my hood warned him that I had the speed to catch up and grab his pathetic ass. I arched a brow at him, then grimaced as he took off running up the stairs to the street. I sprinted after him, annoyed that this was how my night was going. Shoving those freaking ordinaries out of my way, I was careful not to push any of them onto the tracks, though my legs pumped hard as I weaved across the platform and up the stairs. Gasping for breath, I tried to ignore the lactic acid burning in my calves and the little voice in my head that told me I needed to get back to the gym. Around me, college students and employees spilled out of the Starbucks at the corner of the block. I bit my lip to stop from shouting at them to move out of my way, that this was an officially sanctioned chase, which it wasn't, not exactly. Without one of those stupid badges that the NYPD wore, no one would care anyway. I was a damn good private detective, and my agency and I did more grunt work than the police and the Archmage's guard combined, but that meant jack in this world. Turning in a slow circle, I searched the streets that sprawled out from the nexus point of the area. Damn, that man was good at blending in because I couldn't tell him apart from any of the pesky ordinaries in my way. My target wasn't doing anything stupid that would set him apart like running or shouting for help. He was too smart for that. To my right, a drunk swayed and fell against the facade of an average building that could have housed any number of businesses. Nope, not him. To my left, a pair of men were talking and holding hands. I ruled them out immediately. Looking northbound toward one of my favorite people-watching areas, Union Square, I spotted a single man striding toward 14th Street. He was far enough away that meant I'd have to chase him, and I was so not okay with that. The target chanced to look over his shoulder, his body relaxing as he got farther away from the subway exit and crowds. The asshole thought he was home free. I'd show him. I wasn't the most extraordinary person. At barely 5 foot 3 inches tall, I drew little attention myself. My dusky brown skin and thick black hair could have come from any place on the planet. Without my hood, I didn't seem intimidating. I was any 30-year-old in Manhattan on a busy day, not exactly memorable, but not forgettable either. When I wanted to make the effort, I turned some heads, but tonight was not one of those nights. The makeup sat on my vanity at home, and I was 36 hours stale with ketchup stains from yesterday's lunch on my wrinkled black t-shirt, and I was pretty sure I had streaks of dirt on my cheeks. Don't ask. Goddamn. Shit. Asshole. I muttered under my breath as I took out a small vial of potion that my apothecary swore would make my steps lighter and tipped it back into my mouth. As soon as the liquid touched my lips, my feet tingled. A warmth spread throughout my body. The street beneath me softened, and I jumped up and down to test my theory. I landed on silent feet, and my knees didn't ache like they normally did when I stomped like a child. Glancing at my feet, I saw that I floated 6 inches off the ground. Samantha was a genius, and she was getting a very, very generous tip. I may have been broke, but she was worth every penny and ounce of gold. I jogged toward my target on silent feet. Finally, I was close enough to snag the back of his pastel yellow button-down shirt. He was nearly as wrinkled as I was and smelled worse. The shirt contrasted poorly with his complexion. That faint green tinge of someone who was about to throw up spread across his cheeks. "Hey, stranger, we need to talk," I chirped with a bright smile on my face as I whirled him around. The man's eyes widened and his face drained of what little color was left as he tried to fight his way out of my iron grasp. "I didn't do it," he said, his game face slipping. Tears gathered in his eyes, but there was simmering anger behind them. He was good. A little too good. But I knew from liars and bad actors, whatever Vespucci was angry about, this man was probably guilty as hell. Tell them I'm innocent. Tell him I didn't do it. You can tell him yourself, I replied. I held up our now joined limbs and showed him the thin band of swirling green vines that laced through my fingers and entwined our arms from wrists to elbows. See this? You can't escape, so don't try. You can't injure me, so don't try unless you really want to piss me off. And if you give me any trouble, I swear I'll break your legs and drag you around like a puppet and smile the entire time. You're insane, he cried as he tested the bond between us. I grinned. Probably. The muscles of the arm attached to mine tightened. He was ready to bolt and wouldn't hesitate to get dirty. Motherfuck! I trailed off. One of my dearest friends asked me to stop swearing for a month. It wasn't going well. Bracing himself, my target yanked on our arms and booked it in the opposite direction. My magic was powerful, and my desire to get paid was even stronger, and I was so not in the mood for this shit. Hey, asshole, I said, stop trying to run. You're only pissing me off. He pulled me a couple of yards, so I dug my heels into the concrete and held my ground. He yanked on me again, the asshole. Thorns from the magical vine wrapped around our arms grew and pierced his skin. Ah, bitch! He cried out and stopped in place. No one could ever claim I wasn't petty, so I let my temper fly. Grow, I whispered to the thorns, and they pushed deeper into his flesh. Blood spurted from every incision. Me? The vines loved me, so they grew mostly on his side. The last thing either of us wanted was for my blood to spill for him to use however he wanted. We did want, however, for him to feel enough pain to get him to stop his shit. What the fuck? Snarling, I shoved him into a rare gap between buildings that was just wide enough to hide two people. I removed a pinch of soil and herbs from my pocket, whispering an incantation, and prayed this would work. I'd only just learned this technique. Concrete and soil exploded from the ground beneath his feet. Vines and roots from deep below the topsoil slithered to the surface and wrapped themselves around his right leg, ensnaring him to the spot. He roared as his free hand lit on fire, and he swiped it over the vines confining him. That asshole tried to burn my precious vines. Hell no. I waved my hand and snorted. You're wasting your time. My target and companion for the night kept trying, but my sweet spell, powered by the elemental I could feel hanging out under our feet, was no joke. Soil cropped up in the shape of a mitten and snuffed out his fire. What the fuck? He screamed. What the hell are you? Shut up, I growled. With my free hand, I traced a sigil in the air, then made a quick waving motion. The gentle night breeze converged on us, and a wall of air shut up at the end of the valley. No one could hear us now. Better yet, they wouldn't be able to hear him scream. What did you ask me, asshole? He waved a frantic hand at his leg. What the hell are you? I shrugged. I'm the person who's bringing you in. No, he said impatiently, pointing at his trap leg. What the hell is this? Sighing, I considered how much I could hurt him without making a mess. I told you that if you gave me trouble, bones would break. You tried to run, so tell me which part of your leg you won't mind having in a cast for the foreseeable future. The man stared at me in horror. You're insane! Please, for the love of everything, please don't break it. I yawned, then examined my ruined manicure as he fidgeted next to me and compacted the soil and roots tighter around his leg to really get the adrenaline flowing. You're not going anywhere, and as much fun as it would be to see you struggle, I want to finish this and go home. Bitch, you'll pay for this, he retorted, our joined arms slick with his blood. Oops, I forgot about that. Retreat, I said under my breath, and the thorns withdrew. He sighed with relief. You're not going to get away with this. People will look for me, and when they find out you're the one who turned me in, well, there's no place you can hide. I snorted. I'll save you a step and give you my address. Do you know who I am? Do you know what I could do? The man held my stare as long as he could, but his calculating brown eyes looked down as if humbled. Bullshit. Ava Ramos, the gray mage, one good enough that Vespucci sent you after me. They say you're dangerous and a little unhinged. Yeah, I know who you are. Why are you testing my patience? I squeezed his limb a fraction more. He had to have been losing circulation at this point. You know what? I don't care. Broken leg or come along quietly. Your choice. His shoulders sagged. Don't break anything. I'll be in pieces soon enough. A twinge of guilt flickered in me. Vespucci was a player with a capital P, and my detective agency rarely accepted jobs from him. This was the first big one, the first grab I'd done for him. I didn't want to know what would happen to the man once I left him alone with a known psychopath. I wanted my money and gold, then I wanted out. I tugged the man's arm and scowled when he didn't move. Oh, right. I flicked my hand at his leg and sent my magic through the soil and vines, thanking the elemental who I thought I knew for their assistance. I made a note to check on Grimes, my gnome elemental buddy who loved messing with people once I had a few hours to sleep. The soil compacted around him one last time, just for giggles, then crumbled and fell not the hole it came from. My vines and roots, however, were still pissed off. So they slithered up the side of his body, a slow caress of his skin. Sweat dripped down his forehead as the vines circled his neck and squeezed some more. Enough, I said mildly and reached out to stroke them. Don't think you're going to make me feel bad enough to let you go. He gave me a wry smile as he flexed his leg free. I doubt you feel badly about much. Nope, I replied with a breezy smile. Can we walk now, or are you going to test my patience even more? Slumping, he nodded. Fine, I'll behave. Great. I led him across the square, past the subway station and the empty stalls that would be filled with produce and flowers before the sun rose, and dragged him up the now quiet Madison Avenue. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed gorgeous, sparkling rings and necklaces, summer dresses with matching purses and sandals, and luxurious leather shoes, all things I'd normally stop to drool over. But I couldn't because this asshole wouldn't shut up. Why can't we take the train? He whined. We have another 30 blocks to go. I glanced at him sidelong. Shooting the thorns into his arm was a tempting option, but I was trying to be a better person. I want to burn off some energy so that I don't strangle you. Besides, are you really in a rush to get there? He fell silent, thankfully, and I marched him all the way to 78th Street, just 3 miles north. We were almost there when he started flapping his gums again. Ooh, I should have strangled him when I had the chance. I don't understand, he mused, running a hand through his now mussed hair. No one caught up to me before you. I saw another person earlier dressed the same. Was that you? You'd only see me if I want to be seen, I bluffed, finally giving in and answering one of his stupid questions. Around the supernatural world, I was known as this private detective with a squad of badass mages working for her, and it was mostly true. Who was I to ruin that image, even if I was mildly winded from half-dragging his ass, sweaty and really, really annoyed? If he spotted me earlier in the chase, then I was slipping. Shit. I tugged on the man's arm. Go on. I hid from everyone, the Ordinaries police, the Queen's Guard, the Royal Police, everyone, and you got me. How? A good mage never reveals all her secrets. No mystery, no mystique and all. Exactly how old are you? He asked, peering at my side profile. I pulled up my hood uneasily and said nothing. I looked like I was 30 in Ordinary's years, but I was much older. He sighed. Why did the infamous Black Cauldron Detective Agency decide to take this case? I'm not exactly high up on the food chain. Not answering. Next. Why the gray? Letting him talk was a bad idea. He was trying to sniff any bit of information out of me, no doubt ready to use any weakness in his favor. I hesitated, then replied, It suits me. Where did you grow up? What are your powers? The coppery scent of iron filled my nose. My target's arm was drenched in blood, and now so was I. Gross. The first order of business when I got home would be a hot shower or 3. The last few days had been more balmy than usual, and everyone was dripping with moisture. The humidity had to be at least 90%, and my annoyance flared. I massaged the seedling tucked into the sleeve of my jacket and asked for a little help. Cripes, don't you ever shut up? I could die tonight, he said piteously, his brown eyes watering again. He sniffled and wiped his dry nose. Humor me? Please, I wasn't falling for that shit. Nope. Realizing we were approaching Vespucci's building, he struggled against me once more. He's going to do terrible things to me. I yawned dramatically. Not my business. With my free hand, I tried to smooth out the wrinkles on my thin black t-shirt and adjust my hood. I may have been awake for the last 2 days, but I didn't want to look like it. This was too important. My prisoner yanked me to a stop. Tell me something, damn it. Why? For the first time all night, I smiled. Because it's fun, and I'm a woman who likes to find things. I dragged the man into the lobby and gave a quick nod to the security guard. He may not have known who I was on sight, but the gray hood told him enough. Please take the elevator to the penthouse, ma'am, the man wearing a plain black suit and tie said in the most obsequious voice. His hair was slicked back, and he could have doubled for anyone in an Al Pacino film. Yeah, I complained about Ordinaries, but they made great entertainment. The guard wiped the sweat beading on his brow and swallowed hard. I believe he's waiting for you. He had to have known what was about to go down. Not much I could do about that, so I dragged Mr. Talkative into the elevator bay and pressed the button. He squirmed against me as the display above the double doors counted down the floors as it approached us. The door slid open and I shoved the man inside. Vespucci hadn't given instructions to rough up the target, but I figured it couldn't hurt my reputation. We entered the expansive elevator, and I eyed the long, sumptuous velvet paisley chase against the back wall. What I would have given to take a seat and rest for a while. Please, the target begged in a low voice, I'll give you anything. Pay me double what Vespucci's offering and guarantee me that this won't bite me in the ass. We both knew that would never happen. The elevator slowed to a smooth stop and opened silently at the penthouse. As we stepped inside, the open floor plan revealed partitioned rooms, a TV and gaming area, an elegant dining room with a vast table made of marble, and a lighting fixture made of what I suspected was elephant tusks in an area that was decidedly an office. Behind the heavy oak desk that was framed by large windows was one of the shrewdest mages I'd ever met, sat Antonio Vespucci. Dressed in a meticulous three-piece business suit in steel gray with the thinnest navy blue pinstripe, Vespucci stared at me over the rim of his wire-framed glasses. 2 days earlier than you promised. Impressive, Miss Ramos. The corner of my lips quirked into a half smile. You pay well. Must you always wear that stupid hood, Ava? He demanded as he rose and walked around the desk toward me. He beamed. I've known your family since you were in diapers. Stop acting like you don't know me. Sighing, I dropped the badass act and lowered my hood. Vespucci had been my brother's mentor in his adolescent years. People freak when they see the gray hood. Can't you at least let me look tough? I whined. Vespucci snorted. Not a chance in hell. Give me a hug, kiddo. I glared at him, and that wasn't an act. The man by my side, the one I'd spent the better part of my week searching for and trailing, shifted on his feet anxiously. And if I read him right, he was thinking about making a break for it the second we were free of each other. Business first. Mr. Chatty here is getting antsy and pricking my nerves. His arm is sweaty, and I've got his blood all over me. I suppressed a yawn behind my free hand. You should know that he is going to run. One of Vespucci's men, Antonio Jr., who incidentally was not Vespucci's son, stepped forward and reached for my arm. For a mobster, Antonio Jr. was a good guy. He always treated me and Nadia, my best friend, with respect, even when we ran into him in social settings. A true gentleman, that one, though not particularly bright. He secured the target's free arm behind his back with ordinary's handcuffs. His stance relaxed, probably convinced that his bulky frame and impressive height would subdue a desperate man. He smiled at me, flashing his pearly whites. Hey, Ava, he said in a low voice. Let's catch up sometime soon. It's been a while. Eek, was a mobster flirting with me? Antonio Jr. was objectively good-looking, with thick, dark hair, a square jaw, and emerald green eyes. A few inches over 6 feet, with muscles that revealed themselves no matter what he wore, and they were hella impressive. He turned heads. In another world, I'd flirt with him, but I looked and smelled like death. Hey, I said, easing back. Could you please let him go? He asked politely. I'd really appreciate it. Oh, right, I said, my cheeks heating. I touched the seedling in my other sleeve and murmured my thanks, and slowly the vine crumbled to nothingness. The second I did, that idiot threw an elbow at Junior's head and connected solidly with his temple with a sickening crack. Junior went down hard. You will not get away with what you just did. If he's not alive, you'll beg for death yourself, Vespucci said mildly as he came closer to us. I scrubbed at my arm with my sleeve, annoyed. We had this conversation earlier, bud. You can't hurt him or me, so stop making things worse for yourself.